Welcome back, troglodytes, to your daily dose of guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. Well, it's finally here. I don't know what Gibson was thinking. They announced these things way too early. It took us nearly a year and a half to finally get the Gene Simmons basses out here. So Gene Simmons, if you don't know, he's part of the group Kiss. They're one of those bands that doesn't need much of an introduction. Just looking at their face paint will tell you everything you need to know. These are the guys that know how to put on a show. So when they get signature guitars, of course, you're going to have something quite fascinating. So it looks like we got one of those newer style Gibson cases. It's just a nice flat black. I like that they're using the Aris packing system on these things brand new. And we've got like a printed on logo. It's the more rectangular style latches. Let's go ahead and get our first impressions of this beast. True to Kiss fashion, they tried to bling these things out as much as they could. But I've been seeing a lot of guys go, for a Gene Simmons signature bass, it's actually quite mild. So we've got a black gloss finish. When these were first teased about a year and a half, we didn't really get too good of photos. It almost looked like maybe they were going to go after a satin finish, but no. Full on gloss. We get a straight up mirror pickguard with the new Gene Simmons logo that shows not one, but two different styles of basses. Because you got to remember, this is actually part of a G2 series. It is a mainstay within Gibson's lineup. So you don't have to rush out and buy these things right away. It seems like they're going to stay around for a while. So it won't be like other things that like inflate in value instantaneously. Now, if you wait too long, you might have to wait for a long pre-order or something like that. But if you want one of these, you should be able to find one. So let's talk a little bit about the history on these. When these were first announced at the start of 2021, we actually saw two different variations on this. We saw the one that we have here today, which I thought was very Kiss-like. It's very blingy and out there. And then we saw one that had red binding, a red mirror pickguard with matching headstock, and I was kind of pumped for that one. But it's either going to be a limited edition, it got scrapped between now and then. I don't know, because all that we've had announced so far is Ebony. Which, speaking of their announcement video, did you guys see it? I'd be curious to see how people felt about that, honestly. I was surprised Gibson would run an ad like that in 2020. I mean, I get that they were going for, the vintage aesthetic to it. It was supposed to be satirical and things like that, but it kind of made me not want to buy the bass. It's like, hey man, I'm cool enough even without this bass. But basically it just took like a teenager's approach on high school, how he was a loser until he bought this bass, and then he became cool and the ladies loved him. But regardless of how you felt about that, I love the fact Gene was actually a part of that production video. So many artists don't even show their face with their signature guitars. That always bugs me about Fender. If you have a Tom Morello signature guitar, Tom Morello should be doing the demo video, right? Even if Gene only played 4 notes on this thing. At least we still got the signature tongue at the very end of the video. But anyways, what are my first impressions on this beast? It's pretty chunky. Generally, I like my Firebirds to be neck through constructed instead of being set neck like these guys, and to have that center stripe down here, but that's kind of what gives these things this very nice uniform and sleek look. We've got just a cream binding along the edges, so they didn't go too crazy with like mirror binding, which I was really hoping they would do. Then we just have 2 basic pickups right here, 2 volumes and a tone, but something I was surprised about was the hip shot bridge. That actually looks quite nice on this model. And on top of that, we actually have small style hip shot tuners on here. Sometimes bass tuners can be like obnoxiously big. As a primarily guitar player, these feel just about right. But they do look a little bit tiny. So I've been seeing these things range from about 9 pounds up to 11 pounds, so you can definitely find heavier ones if you want to. Generally, Thunderbirds are pretty neck heavy, so I tried to go right in the middle around a 10-pound one. But I really like our choice of inlays here. We saw these on like the Trini Lopez models back in the 60s. You find the Gibson US1. But first impressions aside, I've got to say, I'm kind of let down by this. I was really hoping we would have something a little bit, flashier and blingier. Like, I don't see why at this price point we have acrylic inlays. I feel like Mother of Pearl would have looked very cool. Why we have just a regular Gibson decal instead of an actual inlay. It just makes this whole thing feel a little bit cheap in that aspect. Because these are not inexpensive. They are $27.99 brand new. But if you really think about it, it's a signature bass. I mean, Gene is a pretty big name artist here, so I guess they could have charged more and did the other things too, but we're going to have a lot within his collection. This is just the first one. I'm sure we're going to see a Flying V bass at some point in time. It's been rumored he's even going to get some guitars with an Epiphone and Kramer. There was even a rumor at one point in time he's going to make a double neck that's a bass and a guitar. I'm looking forward to that if that comes to fruition. But the last thing is, I'm not a big fan of the G2 logo on the back. It just seems a bit big in comparison to everything else. I would have rather just seen one of his like kiss faces on it. I will say this feels very substantial. It's a very nice quality bass. When these were first announced, when we had that other colored one, I thought this was like an exact report and just slightly changing some stuff of this bass over here. I'm actually very happy I still have this thing so we can compare it side by side. These guys were actually satin finishes. They had flamed maple sides. It had that red that the whole red one kind of had. Once we take the protective coating off of that one, it'll probably shine just as much as this other Nicky 6. But you can see our layout is a little bit different, but pickup's about the same. But the first thing I notice really comes down to the neck profiles. This one is definitely bigger than the Nicky 6 bass. This feels like so pencil thin and tiny. I would say this neck is definitely a little bit wider and more rounded. But these are definitely some of the coolest Thunderbird signatures that have ever been made. And if you were thinking, hey, that logo just looks weirdly placed in general, it's because normally the Thunderbirds have them on their truss rod covers right here, whereas this one has been put onto the headstock. So how's the case and the case candy? I mean, we already talked about the exterior. It looks a little bit different from what we're used to, but as far as the quality of it, I mean, it feels okay. But I was actually surprised at the interior. That's nice and plush, but rigid down here. And once you have the lid closed, it definitely secures it. I mean, it's got a little bit of moving right here, but at least our headstock's not touching down. I was kind of scared to see that there's this just hanging out in my case. It must have fell out or something. I'll have to make sure it didn't get scratched up or anything like that. But ooh, looks like we have a new warranty card here. Aw man, that's nowhere near as cool as the other ones. So it looks like we're at the start of a new era, guys. Remember those big blue ones that say like Gibson USA and they're about this big? We are now going down to a tiny little hang tag with a QR code. They don't want you to mail it in anymore. That's interesting. And now we have a condensed checklist. I suppose it probably saves paper, but it's easier to lose. Looks like we get a spare set of bolts for our bridge right here. We're still getting a baby photo, the standard Gibson strap, Gibson multi-tool, owner's manual, and polishing cloth. So yeah, it's official. The old warranty cards are gone. They were kind of hard to fit in these things, so I guess I don't miss them that much. But that's big. Those have been like that since the early 90s. I'm calling it. The next thing I think will change are these baggies because they no longer have to fit those big long papers in here. They could probably shrink this down just a little bit. So, without any further ado, let's go ahead and throw this on the workbench to take a look at its parts and specs, and then we will get to a brief playing sample. I'm not much of a bassist. You could probably check out some other reviews if you want a more skilled player, but if you want to see the insides of guitars and basses, that's why you tune into my show. Okay, inside the new G2 bass. I'm actually really glad I decided to buy this and document it because there's something hidden underneath our bridge. I had to tape it off. We'll start with the pickguard first. What I found funny is if you look at the impression right here, you can see some lines in our finish. Now what's actually causing that is the backside of our pickguard. You can see the same lines right there, how they create the whole mirrored surface. Then they just have a clear plastic layer over top of that. But that's all hidden underneath the pickguard. It's not like actually a blemish or anything, but there's a close-up of their new logo. It's a little strange looking right now since we don't have the Flying V bass yet, but I'm sure eventually we'll get there. But now let's take a look at our pickups. We've got two of them on this model, and it is the Rhythm T-Bird in the neck position, and naturally the Lead T-Bird in the bridge. So nothing too special, fancy. I don't think they custom wound them just for him. They're just the regular Thunderbird pickups here. And it's kind of interesting how they construct these. It looks like they're epoxy coated for the most part. As far as our cavity routes, that's what they're looking like in the neck. And here's our bridge. So these mount using 4 foam blocks, and then they also have springs on the 2 mounting screws. So extra stable pickups. But you're going to notice there's no route right here for any type of a pickup selector switch. You just control these using their volume. So you have volume for the neck, volume for the bridge, and then a master tone on all these. So it's more like a blending system. You can have like half the neck on, all the bridge, or just the neck, or just the bridge, you know, whatever you want. You just adjust that with the volume controls. Pretty common on bass guitars. But our output jack is located right here on the side. I get about 9.18 k ohms for our neck position, and for our bridge, 9.15. Both of them together, 4.67-ish. But now for the bridge, take a look at this thing. I've never seen one of these before. I'm sure they're pretty commonplace, but this is a nice bridge. So the ball end of the string goes on there, and then you have individual intonations on all of them. So you can adjust the height of this and the up and down location using these screws to set your intonation. But this isn't as heavy as you think it would be. I'm gonna guess like maybe 8 ounces. Yeah, 8.2. But a lot of Gibson bridges actually use a 3-point adjust system. And imagine my surprise when I took this off. They actually have it in there if you wanted to potentially convert it to the 3-point bridge that Gibson normally uses. I see on the back of this bridge that they have a little insert right there. I'm wondering if that's to retrofit to other guitars that already had it. I'm not sure. But as far as I can tell, there's no reason for that to be in there for this particular bridge. So if for some reason you hate this and you want the other style bridge, it's an option, apparently. But this secures to the top using these little bolts. However, I wouldn't suggest replacing this bridge because I actually think it's quite nice. I would say it's definitely a selling feature of this particular bass. So we've got the custom style binding along the edges. Hopefully you can see it a little bit better here on the Workbench. So this would pair really well with like one of those Firebird customs. That's very similar to what we've actually got going on here, a whole Black Beauty custom thing, just with kind of more fancier inlays. Now if you get this in the light just right, you can kind of see some of the mahogany wood grain, but it's nothing too crazy. Not like a different area on this guitar. But this is a straight up mahogany body. As I was telling you earlier, this is not a neck through constructed bass. It is a set neck. So it's not traditional in that aspect, but it gives it a more uniformed look. So they don't have to have any raised portions or anything like that. But now check out this neck. It's a mahogany neck with an ebony fretboard. Now this one is a little bit streaky, but I think that kind of gives it some character here. As far as QC goes, I mean, you can see like some tooling marks around the edge, but I think that's where they rounded over the binding, so I don't think you can really call that much of a defect. Looks like you've got some marks on the fretboard. I mean, you could fine sand those out if you really wanted to. You don't notice them when the strings are on. Gibson calls these the Pearloid Reverse Split Diamond inlays. Whenever I think split diamond, I think of like a Les Paul Customs logo. I mean, I guess that's kind of similar to what it is. They just kind of double split those. Another lineup of guitars you can find these on are the 90 series, like the V90, SG90. Those are some interesting guitars. But we've got 20 medium jumbo frets with a boisterous 34-inch scale length. Now where this thing truly shines and why I think a lot of people want to buy this is strictly for the neck. It's nice. 1.6 inches at the nut width, and then increases to 2.17 by the 12, so it does get pretty wide. But this is what I like. It's a nice big chunky neck, 0.93 at the first fret, and then chunks up to 1. I mean, this is a ultra rounded neck. Here's the neck at the first fret and the 12th fret. You can see it starts rather skinny, but thick. Then it gets wide and kind of narrows out, but still just nice C shape. Almost U-ish at the first fret. That's really one of the biggest selling features to this, in my opinion. And now our headstock. I think the reason they went for a silkscreen is so they could make it silver. That way it matches the rest of the guitar. But this is the area I was really talking about. How you can just see all the wood grain underneath that black finish. I'm not sure if that's intentional or not, but it certainly gives it an interesting vibe, because that top layer is so glossy smooth. But our truss rod's looking good on this one, and this is what your cover looks like. No wording at all, just the same material as our pickguard. Moving on to the back side, here's what we're working with. We've got a nice comfort carve back here, and not too much else. You don't have any binding or anything like that on back here, but you get the large black strap buttons in your regular locations. And then here's what your control cavity looks like. You actually can see through to the mahogany right there, and it's just 3 Gibson branded pots, nothing too fancy there. The single output jack here. So if you wanted to add 2 additional controls to one of these, it's there. You can do it. Not sure what you would want to do with it, but the possibilities are endless. Here's a good side profile shot of the guitar. Just a clean white stripe. Moving up the back of the neck, you can see your typical wood grain in the neck right there, but everything else is very nice and smooth, extra glossy. You move on to your G2 logo. That's definitely slightly metallic. You can kind of see it glisten in the light, but right beside that is your Made in USA stamp, and then you get your serial number. So this one dates to the 29th day of 2022,
The earliest serial number Sweetwater had, I think, was actually November of last year. I thought about documenting that one, but it was between choosing early serial number, extra heavyweight, or just a nice in-between one, and I decided to go with this one for our documentation piece. But yeah, these Hipshot tuners definitely have a very small profile to them. But I really dig his hardware choice on these, mainly because of how they feel. They've got that light satin black coating over top of them, so they don't show fingerprints. They feel nice to the touch. They're not cold. They probably won't get too hot. And that's exactly what this bridge is made out of. So the only fingerprints you have to worry about is everywhere else on the guitar. All said and done, this example weighs 9 pounds, 10 ounces, but remember, I've seen them as light as 9, I've seen them as heavy as 11, so definitely ask your dealer how much yours weighs if that is important to you. I don't have a proper bass amp, we're just going to run it directly through my audio interface into Logic Pro. All effects will be provided by that. My biggest worry with this thing is that it'd be neck heavy, but no. They place the strap buttons perfectly, they have the distributions just right. So I'm kind of glad I didn't go for that 11-pound beast. This one just feels right. The neck nice and thick. Let's go ahead and get some tones out of this thing. We'll start with both pickups on.
Now that we know all about the new Gene Simmons signature Thunderbird here, what's my final thoughts on this thing? You know, at first, kind of turned off by this thing. It wasn't quite what I was expecting, but now that I've actually plugged it in, held it on a strap, yeah, I get it. I get it. It's a very powerful feeling instrument. You don't have to worry about this thing being ugly. It definitely does make a statement. It actually has some really nice tones hidden within here as well. It's a little bit more versatile than the Nicky 6 bass, in my opinion, because you know, you actually have two pickups that you can use independently of each other, so that gave us some tonal opportunities there. But I've really come to like this neck profile. However, if you don't have big hands, I don't know if you would like this, because it's a full-scale bass, 34 inches, and you have the giant neck on it. It might not be for everybody, so definitely try one of these if you have smaller hands. I could see somebody maybe getting fatigued by how large this neck is. And in that case, definitely go for one of the Nicky 6s. Those things are like pencil thin right up here, so it's definitely something to get used to. But I dig the cosmetics, I dig the tones, and I would suggest checking one of these out if you're in the market for some sort of a Thunderbird bass, because, hey, these things are pretty cool. But I can't wait to see what else might come out of this whole G2 collaboration, because there's gonna be some interesting stuff. We already know it, because some of it's been hinted at and leaked. So if this is what the appetizers are, I'm looking forward to what might be with the rest. All right, Troglodytes, thank you for tuning in today. If you're interested in being the next owner of this particular bass, you can contact me on my website or check it out on Reverb. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we will catch you tomorrow on the next episode. Take care.